I don't know that. All right. Here we go. Let's just do this. Much better. It should be good. I don't know that. Okay. I'm pretty sure this whole thing works. I will start now, so I'll put somewhere in the title that the stream begun at minute 1. This will be a reading of my fantasy novel that I'm working on, that I'm writing. This is a novel in the style of, the books such as The Lord of the Rings, or The Witcher, or, some of the books like The Wheel of Time. So if you're not familiar with this type of genre, these are novels that have fantastical elements to them. They're similar to mythologies, like traditional mythologies where you had all these kind of monsters and demons and, elves, creatures of all types that are involved in the whole plot, with obviously humans usually being the central figures in the whole plot. So essentially, this is a novel that I will name. I've already determined the name, and it will stay the same way, most probably 99% sure of that, called In the Trail of Dawn. All right, and it's in short, a monotheistic psychological fantasy novel. It's about monsters and kingdoms and adventure and all these kind of things, but it does have a monotheistic setting. It has the setting of a world which is essentially it's not hyper, but it's filled with all kinds of religious and political development, right? It's in the setting of a primordial world. This primordial world has begun some 400 years prior to the emergence of the human beings onto it, and it's kind of like an early community type of novel. But anyways, without any further ado, because people will be watching this stream later, maybe a year from the date of this streaming, because I've noticed that people on this channel have actually, watched some of the older streams from before, and have found it beneficial, because obviously the way that the streams that I make are made is basically like a reading or an analysis of a book. So I'm just going to start reading, and you can enjoy listening to what I have written from the prologue and the chapter 1 of my book. All right, without any further ado, I might actually, by the way, make a correction here live, because the book is in process. It's something that I'm still writing, that I'm working on. It's not finalized. It doesn't have all the chapters. It's being worked on. But the thing is, even if I correct something, I'll explain why I corrected, and then I'll keep on reading. Okay, so here it is. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Prologue. Our souls will echo of the truth witnessed until the day of standing. They took hold of their scimitars, turbaned, black-capped, born to do this. The blood of dawn is spilt, and here nearby the Hawra sings, the song of our demise. Our martyred king, Goran, smiles at our death. They held firmly onto the spheres, some of them already covering their mouths after saying the prayers. Those one says, when overtaken by ignorance of all but reality and death, the eternity that awaits behind the door. El-Wahid is with us. Truly the All-High is with the patient and those who rely upon him, said the commander, loud and clear, evoking the enemy that strolled behind the walls. The sons of Zarban, the martyred, slain by Welibor the long-lived. The march stopped, and one of the captains shouted behind the wall, in clear Zulhanayan, Erechet tofavdir de Holomesa e blood de Komaidas. Spread, kill anyone suspicious, and keep some captive. The door opened and sword swung, scimitar upon scimitar, all tipped with sharp onyx blades, arrow after arrow, tipped with the enchantments of Northbreak. 1, quickly 2, 3, and swiftly 10. 15 as they stormed in, and up to 100 till the wall broke, massacred as they attempted to penetrate through the division's hideout. With the wall open, blood was spelt. First, a man or two, then 5, one wounded by the neck, another with a sliced face, 2 more in heart stabbed. God is with us, the commander broke through and found his way deep into the enemy's heart. Shielded with Eophias Naturis Solaris, through the front line he reflected their attacks and blinded them with its light, taking down many. The whole pathway was filled with light from the refractions on Omaranian shields. Some of them shadow-stepped, launched themselves to the captain's spot and stabbed him. The enemy's captain, he fell, and briefly after, the warrior, now 2 and 3, for a free Omaran fell to the arms of the Lady Eliona's angelic breath of death. The Eophian bombs flew into the air and struck the enemy, decapitating, decrystallizing, and taking dozens with them. Some of the men fought with moles, and as they would raise their hands, the massive claws would snatch them in. On the ground they would shout the name of the Almighty, and face the consumption of death's yawn. The commander's shield burst, and killed 7. He conjured it once more, and as one of the legionnaires mistakenly shadow-stepped, he fell to a crystal breath attack. Some of the men attacked the human and Genahite traitors that were in the war column with them. The sun was clouded, and the trench battle descended into the dark. As they pushed for the back, and the assassin squad assaulted the humans, blood spilt at the other end. Few human survivors, but a horde with thousands of the Zulhanayan, piling up one after another, slowly taking down the final defense line. Piling up one after another, slowly taking down the defense line, with the army's captain dead. The men fell without getting to shout their calls to freedom and the Almighty. As the Zulhanayan bloodied the trench in the dark, a massive explosion took a large group, probably from a shadow stepper whose shield fell down. They fought until the clouds receded. Okay, that was the prologue. Now there's like a small sub-chapter called A Letter. 20th of Sinkrad, 406. O merciful Lord, lead me to the sea. Lead me there, and I will not ask you for more. Let me live a life to tell of what I can recall. This is the 2nd day of my escape. I have no water and no food. I want to cry, but I have no energy to do so, and I fear losing it. If I do not find a water source by tomorrow, I will die. I heard that men can go without eating for a month, but without quenching their thirst, only for 3 days. This is my 2nd. If somebody finds this, the Zulhanayan have won the war. The Fis Dirhas are ruined. I am the only one alive, but I hope a handful of others are too. Captain Fezirdir is dead. We have succeeded in our mission. Long live free Omaran, and eternal glory to God alone. I await the embrace of Eliona, the angelic lady of death, if I find no means to water, and hope that she shall gently take me to the Almighty. Reader, stay clear from the Zulhanaya in these parts. 3rd Captain of Fis Dirhas, the 1st Legion of Free Omaran. Okay, now we have chapter 1. This is going to take much longer than 8 minutes. All right, there we go. I think that's a local Bosnian water. Chapter 1. Hey, little one, wake up, said the horse rider, as they passed beneath the arch of Zehan, the fair eagle of the deserts. Zehan was indeed a great warrior, and in fact, one that had excelled in his heroship. The great arch that stood high on the spot where he performed this memorable feat was a checkpoint for travelers, and the conjoinment of the northeastern desert with the borders of Khadrin. What? The girl mumbled, waking up from her traveling nap at the back of the carriage. Wake up, young one. Come on now. You don't want to let the guards keep waiting for us. We're passing the arch. The arch? She screamed in wonder, as the grand piece of architecture just flew over her head, casting a mesmerizing shadow on the carriage, while the sun was at its zenith. Wow! The Arch of Zehan, she said, fixing her turban, which sparked the rider to innocently laugh. As they passed through it, the terrain seemed to get greener, and even some flowers began to appear in the rare bush patches that were scattered all over the place. The magnificent scenery brought a great smile to the girl's face, as she saw a symbol of childhood role models she loved so dearly. "Hold on tight," said the rider, as the carriage found itself trekking a rocky path. The girl firmly held onto the edges of the carriage, as the ride became a lot more bumpy. Still though, this did not take off the smile from her face, which grew onto her after seeing the great arch. "I wonder how high the leap of Zehan was. He must have really hurt his feet falling onto the behemoth," she thought herself. Zehan was of course no mere villager, but the son of a Varanian prince. Though despite that he seemed like a common hunter, perhaps sometimes even a rogue, taking into account his masked outfit and positively wild spirit. Zehan was the famous slayer of Ur-Fizyan, the behemoth of Az-Zarteya, a very small yet developed town in the northeast desert, bordering with the Khadrinian mountains. Zehan was known for having leapt very high, using his attunement to Eophias, as the behemoth took a massive breath. Unfortunately for the great beast, this same breath was its last, as the massive accumulation of wind upon Ur-Fizyan's inhalation transformed into an arch-like formation, having been touched by Zehan's Eophias attunement to the element of air. The fairly colored desert nomad leapt into the air and landed straight onto the beast's head and smashed its skull with a steel mole. The townsmen of Azarteya were witnesses to this great event, and so, in honor of their champion, they erected a monument shaped like an arch which symbolizes his leap. This is exactly why the arch had a very strange curvature, with its left wing moving in one direction towards the pinnacle, while the other wing simply curved northwards, making an interesting piece of architecture seem even more poetic. The carriage crossed the rocky tract, and in the distance one could see many patrolling border guards bearing the flags of the Fistrian Republic. "All right, young lady, we're almost at the border. Remember to not act strange. Border guards don't like strangers," said the rider, chewing on a straw. The arch seemed a lot more distant. 2 hours had passed, and as they approached the eastern lands, the soil seemed a lot less familiar, let's say. Other than a whole desert seeming more different, being viewed from a grassy and rocky steppe, what seemed to peek its head in the distance towards the east was a whole green hill, covering the site of an even greater mountain, behind it which veiled virgin Khadrin from the naked desert of Orania. "What's that?" the girl inquired. "The old border hill. We call it Al-Faisaliya, the divider. And further behind it, well, guess. Another step?" The horse rider laughed. "No, actually, a whole lot of green. And I mean a whole lot of it, on top of a great lot of rock. And by a lot, I really mean an entire mountain. And I don't mean just any mountain either. The great Eoshin," the rider added, butchering the pronunciation of the great Khadrinian mountain. "Seems like a long way until we get to see it," the girl pondered out loud. "Yep, it sure is. And it's going to be even longer if they stop us for too long at the border. It's almost sundown, and we should at least be near Eoteria by nighttime. You're going to need a bed to sleep in for the evening," said the rider, as he spat out the straw that he chewed on. The blissful sight of the desert and green horizons clashing was splendid. In fact, it was as if the young girl was entering a whole new world, where the sun shined a bit differently, and the smell of spring grass seemed a lot more unavoidable. The young girl did not feel so lost anymore. After all, being a desert nomad of Daralwa, the sky was her roof always, and the land, well, simply a platform for the bed, or, if the imagination is strong enough, a soft and slightly unbalanced floor. Half an hour passed, and they were approaching the border. The Fistrian Republic, with its flag of black and yellow checkers with the sign of a nightingale, flied high in the air, on poles fixed firmly onto the patrol houses and also onto the polearms of knights, who wore the finest leather armor ornamented with patterns crafted out of Northbreak flags. A band of knighted guards. Oh, there we go. A band of knighted guards rode towards the seemingly lonesome carriage. The galloping of the knights' horses was so intense that it raised a cloud of dust behind them, great enough to cover the site of Al-Faisaliya and the patrolling border houses. The knights surrounded the carriage, for precautionary purposes of course, and the rider of the carriage raised his hand in sign of peace. Speaking in a very rough Voranian accent, he said, Eohaktem Uhorian, peace be with you, guardians. Ohakte Obireya, and peace be with you, and blessings. The commanding guard responded. Eofezel e Eolifelenah, dialectical or Sfarian. Eofezel, said the rider, dismounting his horse, carrying papers with him and a pouch of coins. I have passed here before. Don't you recognize me, chief? Asked the rider. Nay, I do not reckon your face is familiar, though you must forgive me for that, my good man, as I have been positioned here only recently. The guard responded, taking his papers and cash pouch. I know him, sir. This is Fayhad, the rider. He's a worker from Azartia. He passes through the border every so often with travelers that seek to cross. I assure you, he is safe, sir. One of the accompanying guards added. So we shall see yet. The papers seem fine to me, said the commanding guard. However, there seems to be an excess in the gold that is provided. There is more than enough for one person, he asked. That is correct, chief, said Fayhad. I did not come alone, as you may see. That girl over there is a very young lady who goes by the name of Zuaira bint Tawfan. She is a daughter of a chieftain, said the rider, clearing his throat, from the roughness of the dusted air that the wind brought about from the sandstorm that the horse galloping generated earlier. And from where is this chieftain exactly? The commander inquired. At Daralwa, the great home of sheep-herding champions, the dome of my father Tawfan, one of the sons of Ghurian and vanquisher of Bani Fazlan, she said, praising her family and lineage, as is customary for a Voranian desert dweller. The commander approached the carriage on his horse with a rather intimidating look. You mean to say a bandit leader? Perhaps also a desert-dwelling burglar of some kind, or maybe even a desert pirate? Said the commander as he gazed directly at the girl, who was now quite shy about her father's glorious feats. The gathering was quite silent. Zuaira's aspiring boasts had turned into a possible nightmare. She could just be interrogated for potential desert highway robbery, even though her father had not done any such thing. Your name and papers, said the commander, snapping Zuaira out of her anxious state. She stood for a bit, wondering what had just happened. Ahem. Young lady, your name and papers, he reiterated, seeming quite impatient for even the slightest pause. Suddenly she snapped out of confusion and quickly responded to the guard. My name? Ah, yes, of course. I am Zuaira bint Tawfan, as my guide just mentioned to you. And yes, here my approval of pass and patron's contract. The commander took the papers, examined them, and gave an approving nod to the young lady. You may pass, he said, further inquiring. Under the law of the Great Republic of Istria and the autonomous peoples of southern Kadrin, I permit you here, Zuaira, the daughter of Tawfan, shepherd, to pass the border to Istria and enter Kadrin. I hereby approve of your parents' patronage plea and permit you to stay in Kadrin under supervision of Zefina Urfian of Eastway, as stated in the patron's contract. If you are interrogated in any way by the state and the patronage contract with here named Zefina Urfian is breached by the ending of this year, you will be vulnerable to the accusatory branch of the Istrian court. Do you, Zuaira, a shepherd, the daughter of Tawfan, chieftain of Banu Ghurian, hereby agree to the stated terms and regulations? I agree, she responded. Very well. I welcome you then both to the rightful territory of the Republic of Istria. Once you pass by our station and enter the road towards Al-Faisalia, said the commander, butchering the pronunciation of the bordering hill. The guard patrol departed from the interrogation spot and returned to the patrol houses to station the horses. The guards as well, after all, deserved to have a bit of a rest. As for Zuaira and Fayhad the rider, they swiftly cut through the waves of the border steppe soil leading to Mount Faisalia. Fayhad knew of a local village where they could find a place for Zuaira to stay in, while Fayhad would sleep on the carriage's bedding. Back at the border station, the commander Rianir was getting ready to serve tea for his comrades after a long patrolling day on the steppe. He prepared some fine cups of green splendor hailing from the distant lands of Amare. Eoves, he said, serving the cups before his comrades, and without hesitation. Eosif, a cup for him too. They sat down, looking through the window pane, which reflected slight variations of the sun's encore ray spectacle in the distant west. Rhaenyra, said Eovis subtly, gazing through the window pane as his commander read the chronicles of Enmar. Lifting his brow, the commander responded, "Yes, what is it?" "That girl earlier. Why would a girl of Bani Ghurian cross the edges of the desert to travel to Kadrin? And not just to some well-known place, as I'd assume for university studies, but this very specific Eastway at the war border. God knows. All I cared about was making sure the young one's documents are intact. I certainly wish we were stricter on the regulations of traveling younglings." "Indeed, it all does seem worrying," said Eosif. Oh my god. "It's a dangerous world out there in the deserts, and it's even more fierce being lost in a forest in fair Katrine. Even the greatest trekkers have a hard time finding their way to the southern belt, let alone a lonely desert girl." Rhaenyra smirked. "Let's just hope she will be safe and sound in Eastway. She has a whole year until the contract must be renewed, and I doubt she'll be staying longer than 6 months," said Rhaenyra the commander. "What makes you say that?" said Eovis, after sipping his tea. The wind howled outside, and one of the chamber candles were dimmed. "It's very simple, my good man. The desert dwellers send their children until the age of 3 or 4 to stranger places, so that they may become stronger and more vital, although so far they seem to tend to do it among themselves. But now, this girl, for some odd reason, she's headed for the greenest place in the world, and not for academic studies." "Strange," the commander contended. The wind howled even stronger, and one of the back room windows opened. Eovis rushed to close it, almost spilling his cup of tea. "Easy now, Ves. Easy. I doubt anything was wrecked at the back," said Eosif. The commander stood at the window pane and ignited another candlestick, placing it on the granite kitchen table. "What is it?" Eosif inquired. "Nothing. I was just worried for that girl. Anywho, I will place her certificate in the Waranian specific file. If she gets in trouble, we know where to find the paper quickly. In any case, that's enough. We have to prepare for the night shift." "Of course, sir," said Eosif. "Eovis." "Yes, sir." The guard voiced himself from the basement. "Prepare for the night shift. I give you both half an hour to rest. I'm going to finish writing my chronicles outside at the stable porch," said the commander. "Understood, sir," yelled Eovis from the basement. The 2 guards took off the plates from their armor to rest their weary arms. Later, they would rearm themselves with fresher leather gear. The commander departed for the stable, with his chronicle papers and a fine pen produced in southeastern Kadrin. Now the wind blew eastward, where young Zoyra traveled, disappearing from sight to the guard station. "Wow, amazing, isn't it?" said the rider. "It really is. And look at those trees. Are they violet?" Zoyra added, reflecting on the distant sundown upon Mount Faisalia with its lushful violet and colorful trees and tree-like safe havens. "I've never seen anything like that. Please tell me we will be staying near there for the night. Or no, even better, can we stay there at dawn for a while? I'd love to wander among those trees," young Zoyra asked. The path seemed a bit more bumpy again, shaking the carriage as if it were a newborn's cradle. Zoyra enjoyed it though. It wasn't that often that one could enjoy a bumpy road for strange reasons while watching the sunset into a lushful natural wonder. She enjoyed the road, but for the rider it was just another day at work. The poor fellow was a bit older, although he had the strength of a young spirited Northbreak sailor. You could even say he was a sailor himself, a sailor of the sands. "Fahad, right?" "What?" said the rider, as the carriage crossed a very shaky portion of land. "Your name, it's Fahad, right?" Zoyra asked. "It is indeed," he said, and remained silent. It seemed as if the rider was a bit timid in expressing personal detail, which was quite interesting taking into account his charismatic character. "My brother is called Fahad. He's a student," said Zoyra. The rider fell silent again. "It's almost sundown. We should have enough time to get to Eocentria," he said. Some time passed. Zoyra felt a bit unhandy due to the rider's lack of inquiry, of her brother. She kept silent as well. "You mentioned your brother, Fayhad too, huh?" he eventually asked. She grinned slightly. "Yes, Fayhad is 23 summers old. He studies at the University of High Arts in Eozevan." "Really?" said the rider, slightly grinning as he was happy to see his name tied to an honorable position in society. Mount Faisalia was becoming clearer, and in the distant north, slight signs of a border river were appearing on the horizon. Zohira thought it was a mirage, as it still mingled with the vast landscape of the steppe, and the sky whose colors were ignited by the rays of the sun. "Yes," she said, pulling out of her pockets a loaf of bread that her mother cooked for her. "He is. He's a lot smarter than me. In fact, he's a lot smarter than the rest of our tribe. Probably even the whole district. Heck, he's probably the smartest person in the deserts." "He's no longer in the deserts though, is he?" the rider added. Angered by the comment, Zohira remained silent. "What?" asked the rider. What? She condescended. "What is it? Are you really angry at me?" the rider asked and began to laugh wholeheartedly, seeing it more of an appropriate response to this somewhat sticky situation. Zohira, however, remained silent, ignoring the rider. They rode silently until the high peak was the only part of El Yashan that rose above Al Faisalia. It seemed like a white dome that peaked on the dividing mount, ornamenting the lushful greenery and violet trees with a snow-covered cap. At a certain distance, one could even mistakenly think of it as being Al Faisalia's cap. The path became a lot tighter and swerving southward where the town of El Centria hid behind the southern slope of the mount. As the village became clear, the rider decided to speak first. "You see that?" he said in a more heartwarming tone, hoping to bring Zohira back to conversing. "See what?" she said, leaning over the carriage to see the path ahead. "Whoa, is that a fortress?" she asked. "No, it's a whole town, and that's just a watchtower," Fayhad replied. It looks like one of those colleges from Avid Moria, a high watchtower, stone wood combination of a wall building. "I saw it in a travel chronicle my family got from a Khadrinian caravan once," she said. "It doesn't surprise me. That is traditional Khadrinian architecture. Seems like it's the only thing in common for the Fistrian Confederates and Avid Morians." "What does surprise me, however, is that you have an interest for architecture," said Fayhad, striking the horses to move faster and speed up the carriage's movement. "It surprises me that you're surprised by it. My brother is an intelligent man, and although I tend to be more of a huntress, I did take on some of his interests though, particularly in the arts," she said. "So he's an artist," said Fayhad, slightly chuckling. "What's so funny?" said Zohira, jumping on the carriage so much that she caused the rider to stop the horses. "My brother is one of the wisest people I've known. He bears the same name as you. Show some respect." The yelling frightened the rider. As Zohira's voice thundered in the steppe, he stroked the horses again and continued the ride. Zohira sat down again, looking backwards at the edge of the Waranian desert that they departed from far now. In fact, so far that now she felt a bit more anxious about this whole trip, especially since she was far enough to not survive a walk back to Daralwa. The closest place was the station of the guards, and having passed the thorough process of border pass approval, she didn't really feel like escaping was the wisest choice, and so she remained in the carriage. Furious at the rider who disrespected her brother, she sat, thinking about how silent the rest of the journey might be. This tension would not last for long, however, as Fayhad was a rough nomad, but he had the heart of a kind old man. Putting on his turban, he sighed. "I apologize, and may you convey my apology to Fayhad too, if you get to see him soon." Zohira remained silent, but after seeing the distant town again and the majesty of El Centria, she seemed to be more eager to talk again. She put her hoodie over her head as the air grew colder. Slowly the sky darkened and the sun sank behind the horizon, with a few of its hairs flaring in this distant sky. "So, what does Fayhad study?" the rider asked. "The high sevenfold arts," she answered, mimicking the pompous movements and voice of a stereotypical professor from Avid Moria's universities. "And those are?" "Logic, rhetoric, let me think. that science of making words sound really nice and woven. You mean grammar? Yes, grammar, she answered instantly. First time I heard about the first two. What were they again? The writer asked. Logic, rhetoric. Then we said grammar. Then the Eophias, and after those, alchemy. Something called philosophy. Something along those lines, and also the martial arts. Zuhaira was very keen on preserving her brother's honor, and it seemed to Fayhad, the writer, that she was the spokeswoman of the family, making him wonder more about the wise brother that bore the same name as him. What about the rest of your family? He said, nodding his head as they passed by a fellow Bedouin traveler that did the same. If you do not mind me inquiring, of course. Sure, I will tell you. My father is Tawfan ibn Salim of Bani Ghurian. He is, as you know, a chieftain of our tribe. His father, Salim, my grandpa, was a very rich man. In fact, he had 50 red camels when he died. What happened to the camels? He gave 25 into charity, and the other half was given to my father and his then wife, Suhaila. Suhaila is not your... said Fayhad, and Zuhaira quickly stopped him. No, she is not my mother. My mother is Sayana bint al-Qaws, a great Sayyida of Banu Kirwan. Banu Kirwan? He went that far, inquired Fayhad. Zuhaira chuckled. You know what they say, the majesty of a man is in his manifest struggles, while the majesty of a woman lays in her inward prowess. My father was trained to be a merchant healer. He thought very well of all people, so perhaps that made him blessed in the land. And I would dare say that I am among his greatest blessings, said Zuhaira quite flamboyantly. Daughters are not only the pride of their fathers, but their vicious wit, Fayhad smirked. Then suddenly, a whiff from the wind ahead of them made a piece of paper appear and fly into Fayhad's pocket. Strange, Zuhaira, a piece of paper just flew into my pocket, said Fayhad, busied with the reins of the horses. Really? Zuhaira inquired happily to them, and the ground appeared wholly green, a big forest ahead of them, awaiting Zuhaira's arrival. But in the distance there appeared a caravan. Its sight was unpleasant to bear, and the atmosphere of the path turned dull. There we go. That's pretty much it, folks. That was chapter 1. Technically speaking, 13 pages, but if you include the prologue and the small letter chapter in between, 15 pages overall. I hope that anyone that will watch this stream in the future after I have recorded it, because I don't have that many people watching the stream right now, that you will enjoy what was read. And yeah, if you have more interests in the stuff that I write, please feel free to ask, leave a comment, and I will gladly answer and tell you more about the novel. Soon I'll be making a oh, what the hell was that? I wasn't expecting that. A green screen? Yeah, I didn't want a green screen. Okay, yeah, so anyways, I hope that you have enjoyed this, and that if you're interested in this novel, that you'll keep track of what I'm writing. And yeah, have a good one. Take care.